video is to go over graphing cosine and sine functions. So, first of all, let's understand what the sine and cosine is. Sine is that sine theta equals rise divided by radius or hypotenuse. So if we have a triangle like that, the angles over there will be theta, rise will be right here, that's our old friend, and ran is the right there, hypotenuse, the longest side of the triangle. So sine is the ratio of rise to hypotenuse. In other words, rise divided by hypotenuse. So the cosine is run divided by hypotenuse. And tangent is the slope, which is rise over run. Okay? And we have a sine function, for example, f of x equals sine of x. And we do also have g of x, other function, equals cosine of x. So let's graph that. If we graph it on geometry graphing calculators, we'll see waves. That's almost kind of like symmetric almost, but not respect to y-axis. Let's graph cosine of x. That looks shape-wise, it's pretty much the same, but it's kind of like a translated or slided to the right or left. But where does this come from? This actually website gives us a nice idea about where that comes from. So let's look at the first one. So first of all, generating of the sine function by wrapping around a unit circle. So as you travel along the edge of the circle, the height or the rise gets longer and longer up until the 90 degrees, and it gets shorter and shorter towards the 180 degrees. And then it starts getting longer towards that kind of downward, and when it hits the y-axis, it starts going, start getting shorter. So that is reflecting the graph of it. So that's the graph of the sine function is the kind of like the height of A. Let's look at it one more time. It gets longer and longer so that the graph gets higher and higher. When it gets to the top, which is 90 degrees, the height is getting shorter and shorter. And when it gets to the pi, which is 180 degrees, it starts getting longer towards downwards. And then when it hits the 270 degrees, which is 3 pi fourth, the sine gets shorter and shorter, and it gets to the pi. How about cosine? Cosine, again, is that b or run or x values. And the cosine is b over 1. So the graph of cosine is reflecting the length of the b. So length of the b started out with 1, and it gets shorter and shorter towards 90 degrees, and it starts getting longer and longer to the left, which is the negative side. And when it hits the pi, which is 180 degrees, it starts getting shorter and shorter again. You see that right there? Shorter and shorter. When it hits 270 degrees, which is 3/4 of pi, it starts getting longer and longer towards 1, towards the positive side, and it goes back to 1. So again, a cosine x is the length of b or run. So that gets longer or shorter depending on where you travel. If you travel along the edge of the circle towards 90 degrees, the run gets shorter and shorter, and it starts going longer and longer as you travel longer. And then when it hits 180 degrees, it's exactly -1. That's where the pi is. So the -1, and it starts getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And then when it gets 3/4 of pi, it starts getting longer and longer and goes to the pi. And that's the graph of sine and cosine.